A storm has struck at the heart of Britain's democracy. For the first time in modern history, the UK Supreme Court has ordered a sitting Prime Minister to resign. The man at the centre of the storm is Keir Starmer, and the number at the centre of his downfall is £124,000, a figure that has exploded into a national scandal, transforming from a line in a financial document into a symbol of betrayal, corruption, and broken trust. This is not politics as usual. This is a constitutional earthquake shaking Westminster to its core. The judgment came down like a hammer. In a packed courtroom, Chief Justice Dame Sue Carr delivered a verdict that stunned the nation. Her words were sharp, unyielding, and impossible to ignore. The Prime Minister, she declared, had committed deliberate and repeated breaches of financial transparency. Evidence showed money missing, property sales underdeclared, and luxury gifts concealed from the public. The £124,000 scandal was not an error. It was, the court ruled, a calculated act of deception. The details are damning. A family property sold for £104,000 below its true market value, with the profit quietly excluded from Starmer's official register of interests, a clear violation of ministerial rules. Added to this were revelations of undisclosed donations, a £39,000 gift from a wealthy donor with ties to offshore accounts, expensive travel perks disguised as research trips, and a trail of evasive filings designed to keep Parliament in the dark. These were not mistakes. They were deliberate acts of concealment. The court made one thing clear: no Prime Minister, no matter how powerful, can stand above the rule of law. The impact was instant. Westminster erupted in chaos. MPs scrambled, party aides rushed into backroom meetings, and journalists poured out headlines in red and bold, calling it the most significant constitutional crisis of the century. Protesters outside Parliament Square erupted into chants of "Resign now" as the news spread like wildfire. On social media, outrage exploded, with hashtags like #StarmerScandal and #Resign, now racing to the top of global trends within minutes. Across the nation, people were stunned, angry, and demanding answers. Inside Number 10, silence ruled. Starmer made no statement, issued no apology, and offered no explanation. His advisors scrambled to contain the fallout, but there was no strategy that could undo the Supreme Court's binding order. Opposition parties moved quickly. The Conservatives demanded a vote of no confidence. Reform UK called for immediate elections. Even within Labour, cracks began to appear. Senior ministers whispered privately that the party could not survive if Starmer refused to go. One cabinet member, speaking off record, said the words that now haunt Westminster: "This is the end, he must go." But Starmer refused to break his silence, and that silence only grew heavier with each passing hour. Crowds outside Downing Street swelled, waving banners that read, "Clean politics for Britain and the court has spoken." Television screens replayed the verdict on loop, commentators describing the ruling as earth-shaking and without precedent. For Britain, this was no longer about one man. It was about whether the nation itself could still be governed by law. As the hours turned into days, the scandal deepened. Investigative journalists dug further and uncovered even more troubling evidence. Leaked financial records hinted that the £124,000 property sale was only the beginning. Offshore accounts linked to donors surfaced in confidential reports. Rumours swirled of foreign money funneled into Labour's campaign coffers. MI5 was briefed on potential national security concerns, raising the stakes even higher. Suddenly, this was not just about undeclared profits. It was about corruption that could stretch far beyond Britain's borders. The fallout grew unstoppable. International leaders expressed concern. The United States and the European Union issued cautious statements, urging the UK to resolve the crisis swiftly and lawfully. Markets trembled as investors pulled back, fearing instability at the heart of Britain's government. Meanwhile, at home, protesters staged mock trials in Manchester, chanting "Guilty, guilty" in front of cheering crowds. In Glasgow, demonstrators built a towering effigy of Starmer, wrapped in paper chains marked £124,000. The symbolism was brutal and unforgettable. In Parliament, the pressure built to breaking point. The Supreme Court's ruling was not advisory, it was binding. To ignore it would be to defy the very foundations of Britain's democracy. Legal experts warned that if Starmer clung to power, the entire constitutional order could collapse. The choice was stark: obey the law or risk the unravelling of trust in government. As one legal scholar declared on live television, "This is not about politics anymore. This is about whether Britain is still a nation ruled by law." By the second day, Westminster was no longer a seat of government. but a battlefield of survival. The fury that had begun with whispers had grown into a deafening roar of outrage. Parliament Square overflowed with protesters camping in tents, waving flags scrawled with the words, "The court has spoken." Their chants of resign now," echoed against the stone walls of power. From London to Liverpool, Cardiff to Edinburgh, ordinary citizens poured into public squares demanding accountability. Pensioners, students, nurses and factory workers, people who had once placed their trust in Keir Starmer as a man of principle, now turned against him with anger that was raw and visceral. "If the Prime Minister can cheat, why should the rest of us follow the law?" shouted one protester into a reporter's microphone. That single question spread like wildfire across the nation, crystallising the crisis into something far greater than one man's downfall. It had become a test of whether the very rule of law could survive. Inside Labour's headquarters, chaos reigned. Internal memos leaked by anxious aides revealed a party in total collapse. Campaign plans were scrapped overnight, and private polling painted a devastating picture. 72% of the public demanded Starmer's resignation, including nearly half of Labour's own voters. Strategists warned the party's lead had evaporated, and without decisive action, the next election would deliver ruin. In hushed conversations, senior figures admitted the truth. If he stays, we all go down with him. Panic seeped through every corner of the party. Some MPs considered defecting to the Liberal Democrats or Reform UK to escape the wreckage. Even the unions, Labour's lifeblood, turned cold. Unite the Union issued a stern statement demanding total accountability in public office. They did not mention Starmer by name, but the target was unmistakable. The message was clear: Labour could no longer defend the indefensible. Meanwhile, in Parliament, the atmosphere was electric and poisonous. Conservative MPs pounded their desks in fury, demanding a vote of no confidence. Opposition leader Rishi Sunak delivered a fiery speech that shook the chamber. "No leader can stand above the court, no Prime Minister can defy the rule of law. Starmer must resign, and he must resign now." His words were met with cheers from the Tory benches and silence from Labour MPs who could no longer muster a defence. Even Nigel Farage, circling the chaos from outside, fanned the flames by declaring that if Starmer refused to step down, the people themselves would remove him through mass protest and civil action. The pressure inside Westminster was unbearable, the shouts of resign growing louder every hour, yet still Starmer refused to speak. His silence was deafening, and it became the greatest weapon against him. The media, once cautious, turned ruthless. The Guardian, long considered a Labour ally, ran a scathing editorial demanding accountability. The BBC aired the headline, "Judicial Shock, Supreme Court orders PM to resign." The Mirror, once supportive, shifted its tone from loyalty to countdown, no longer asking if Starmer would go, but when. News anchors described the Prime Minister as a man trapped in denial, his silence painting him not as a leader in control, but as a fugitive from the truth. Cameras camped outside Number 10, day and night, broadcasting every flicker of movement. An aide arriving, a car leaving, a window curtain twitching. To millions watching at home, it felt like waiting for the collapse of a government in real time. By the fourth day, the crisis had reached the monarchy itself. Royal sources whispered of unprecedented discussions within Buckingham Palace. Advisors briefed the king on the possibility of invoking reserve powers, an extraordinary step to dismiss the Prime Minister outright if he continued to defy the court. For decades, such powers had been considered relics of history, never to be used. Yet now, in the face of a leader refusing to obey a binding judicial order, the unthinkable was being considered. Constitutional scholars admitted on live television that the Crown might have no choice but to step in if Parliament failed to enforce the ruling. The very suggestion sent shockwaves across the nation. Britain was rehearsing a scenario once thought unimaginable. International pressure only added to the storm. European leaders froze negotiations with London, unwilling to deal with a government collapsing into scandal. Washington issued carefully worded statements urging swift and lawful resolution, while financial markets shuddered under the weight of uncertainty. The pound slipped, investors fled, and economists warned that Britain's credibility was on the line. What began as a scandal over £124,000 had spiralled into a full-blown constitutional crisis, threatening to drag the nation into diplomatic and